about young Daniel. What was he like?
Folks basically labeled me as different, right? Like, I think kind of being told who you authentically are is wrong. Even during that messy part of going through conversion therapy.
I don't want to glaze over
Yeah.
the conversion therapy. What did conversion therapy look like for you?
I remember distinctly one time I had got beaten so bad and I was trying to run away from the beating, and I slipped and I hit the corner of like a piece of furniture and I was knocked unconscious. And I was unconscious, and when I came to, I could hear the screams of like, stop beating him. He's out. He's out cold. And so,
Because you were still getting beat while you were unconscious.
I was still getting beat while I was unconscious. And so I needed to escape, because I feel like if I didn't escape that day, I was going to be dead. And I didn't even think twice, and I bolted.
So then fast forward, you know, you're at grandparents' house, you're living, you're thriving, you feel more comfortable.
You're still
able
more
to
free.
Be Daniel.
Yeah.
And then you decide you want to move to Atlanta. Talk to us about that.
Ooh, Atlanta. I was trying it all, and I think that's healthy. I remember one of the trans women saying like, oh, you don't kind of look like yourself. What's going on? And I remember her saying, have you gotten an HIV test? And I'm like, an HIV test? What is that? What's an HIV test? What is HIV? Take the test. They do everything, and they go down the list. Negative. And then they get to the HIV and they said, you've tested positive for HIV. And I looked just like this.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talk with Koiya. I am your host, Koiya, and as you know, this podcast is brought to you by Talk, Test, Treat. If you are in the Central Florida area and looking for somewhere to get tested, visit www.talktestcfl.com. Today we have a very special guest on today's episode. This is someone who I've been social media friends with for a while now. We've never physically met until today. I've heard this person's name from so many people. I mean, he has really trailblazed his path. And he owns it, and I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Daniel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited that we finally got to meet. Like I said, we've talked via email, we've talked via social media.
Yeah.
But this is like our first time meeting in person.
This is. And I'm equally excited about it, because I feel like we have had that like digital connection, but it's really great to be able just to share physical space with you.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't translate either what happens digitally in person, and I definitely think it translates here. It's like, okay, he's the same person.
Oh, yeah.
That I thought.
Same person on Facebook or Instagram, same person in real life.
Yes, and I love it. I love it so much. All right, so we start every episode with the Talk with Koiya card game.
Okay.
So I'm going to have you pull a card and then read it aloud.
I can pull just what's on top or...
Go for it.
Okay, let's do this. How would you start a conversation surrounding HIV with friends?
Ooh, this is a good one for you.
This is a good one. I'm gonna have to really ponder about this. I think, how would I start? Well, me personally, I feel like I'm just always like a straight to the point person, where it's kind of like rounding up the gals, as I like to call them, and being like, okay, like let's have like a kiki of sorts, or, you know, like a little fireside or tea time chat. I think I probably organically would do that, where I would just like, you know, round up my friends and just kind of have a conversation. I think it's a little bit interesting for me because I'm a person living with HIV. So I feel like those conversations are always consistently happening, because my disclosure is something that's happening repeatedly, depending on like, you know, the context of who it is or the people. But yeah, I think I would just go for it. Yeah.
I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
pull another one.
Okay, let's pull another one. If you are HIV positive but undetectable, can you transmit HIV? I'm getting all the good ones.
You are. That's another good one.
I love that. So the answer to this question is very clearly no. So for individuals like myself who are living with HIV, who are in care, see our medical provider routinely, are taking our medications as prescribed, we reach what is called undetectable status. What that basically means is that every time our medical provider does a blood draw to see how much of the virus is in our actual blood, there is so little of the virus that it doesn't get picked up or detected on that specific lab test. And I didn't come up with this cosign, but the Center for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, thousands of hundreds of medical providers, not only in the US, but around the world, have stated for individuals like myself that are undetectable, we cannot transmit HIV to any of our partners when we are having fun times, sexual intercourse. There haven't been any cases of that happening. And so, yeah, to answer that question, no.
I love that. And you are the perfect person to answer
Uh-huh.
that question. You got two good ones.
I did. I really did get two good ones. I was starting to glisten a little bit like, ooh, I wonder what these questions are going to be like. But I'm glad y'all took it easy on me.
Yes, you killed it. You killed it. So let's hop straight into things.
Yeah.
I want to talk about young Daniel.
Okay.
What was young Daniel like as he was finding himself growing until ultimately the person that you became? What was he like?
Ooh, he was a mess.
In what way?
Young Daniel was a mess, but I think a beautiful mess, because there isn't especially when, like, for folks like myself who identify on the queer spectrum, there isn't a manual or guidebook of what that looks like, right? I think a lot of the times we are drawing our guidance and our influence and our inspiration just from kind of like what we see, like other people or the media. And so young Daniel coming into his queerness was a beautiful mess. There were beautiful moments, I think, of like finally being able to put a label on this thing that made me different, right? Because I knew that very, very early on coming into the world.
How early on? Like, when did you know that, like, I'm different?
I think I realized I was different at the age of around 5 or 6.
Ooh.
When folks basically labeled me as different, right? Like, I think for me, I'm just existing in the world and just remembering, oh, he's so soft-spoken, like a girl, or, his mannerisms. And I think for me, that was the very first time that I recognized, like, oh, I'm different from, like, these people that are around me. And so that was kind of like the first bit of consciousness of like, okay. And then I think as I evolved, or as I like to say, blossomed, I then was able to kind of put 2 and 2 together, where it was like, oh, there are other people like me that are under this label that kind of, this is how they are. And the beautiful thing about that is you kind of recognize that you're not alone. It's like, oh, there's like this community of people. I think the messy part is kind of the journey to being comfortable with yourself, accepting yourself for who you are, the mishaps that you make along the way, and then also what I would say, some of the ouch moments, right? So I think about, as I was evolving and blossoming into who I was, I was very much a part of a very big faith community. A minister's kid, actually. So it felt like a double whammy. Like I came into the world, just like rolled out into church, and then on top of that, as a minister's kid. And so I think the messy part of coming into who I was being in a community that didn't appreciate that per se and saw that in a negative way, right? And so kind of being told who you authentically are is wrong. Kind of being told we'll take this part of you, but then this other side of you, you got to tone it down or cut it out, right? And so part of that messiness was going through conversion therapy. Because I think, folks felt like he can't do this on his own. He needs something else to kind of help and aid that. And I don't want to say the unfortunate part but I think the interesting part that I think many people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, like myself, there's an intrinsic hidden resilience that we all possess, right? And so even during that messy part of going through conversion therapy, that authentic piece of me, it just couldn't be stripped away. And they tried everything under the sun to strip it. But it just wouldn't go away. And so it made me realize two things. It made me realize, wait a minute. If I'm created in the image of this being, and this being, this higher power, knows everything about Daniel, from the time that I come into the world until the time that I'm going to transition out. And if this being is saying, I know all of this about you, and I still love you, I did all of these things because of my love for you, why would I want to change who I authentically am? Because who I authentically am actually brings me closer to this higher power, right? Like me trying to be something inauthentic that's not me is going to actually push me further away from this higher power, because this higher power does not dwell in inauthenticity or lying or falsehood, right? And so it made me realize, no, part of my spiritual journey and my spiritual connection is being authentically who I am and holding on to that and recognizing how that brings me closer in my spirituality and closer into my faith. And then the second part of it was recognizing, maybe this isn't the faith community for me. Not saying that it's like everything about that faith community is wrong, but this isn't the spiritual home for me. And so I need to find me a spiritual home that feels safe, where I feel like I belong, where I'm not, being told, well, we'll take all of your gifts and all of your talents, but who you are, you have to hide, right? And so yeah, I think that was kind of like the beautiful mess of it all.
Yeah, of course. Wow. You experienced so much in your early part of your life alone, because how long of a process, or how long was that you would say? How many years did you go through the whole
conversion
don't want to be here, conversion therapy, people noticing you're different, you are coming into agreement with, okay, I am queer, all of that? How long was that process?
Ooh, I think that conversion therapy lasted roughly 4 years.
And was there anything that triggered the beatings? Did you know, like, every day at 7:00 I was going to get beat? Like, what?
yes and no. Sometimes I knew it was coming because it might have been something I did. You know, I crossed my ankles.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know. I walked a certain way. I might have used my hands too much, right? And so those things I kind of like I knew it was coming. Other times I didn't know it was coming. The other thing I think that makes that made me realize like, okay, this is the faith community that I need to be in was people knew. It wasn't like it was a secret, right? Like it wasn't like it was a secret that I was going to this camp or that these things were happening. People knew. But that was part of the times, right? It was kind of like, it ain't our business, right? Or
we don't talk about
we
it.
We don't talk about it. We let it happen on its own. But people knew. People knew. And I don't know if people were scared or that they didn't care. But for me, it was kind of like, I felt so much anger. Because I was like, y'all know I am getting my ass, I'm getting my ass beat.
Yeah.
Beat. I am being forced to do things that I do not want to do. And y'all don't care. All y'all want me to do is shut up and sing. Shut up and lead youth ministry. Shut up and we want all your talents, all your gifts, all that other stuff. We don't care about. We don't care about. And so there was a lot of anger and a lot of resentment that I had to work through in regards to that. But yeah, it was. Whew, it was a time. That's why I said it was a beautiful mess. It was a beautiful mess.
Yes, and that it was. So then fast forward, you know, you're at grandparents' house, you're living, you're thriving, you feel more comfortable.
Feel more comfortable,
you're still
more
able
free.
To be Daniel.
Yeah.
And then you decide you want to move to Atlanta. Talk to us about that.
Ooh, Atlanta.
And then at the time you were moving to Atlanta, that's when Atlanta was
Atlanta. Yes. And so high school was a typical high school, right? Like you're finding yourself more. You are experiencing the ups and downs of being a teenager, but then there's also this excitement because it's kind of like you're going off to college. And for me, Atlanta, even though I was kind of isolated from the world, you know, like I would hang out with my cousins and there'd be whisperings and stuff, or they may have like a gay friend and they talk about, oh, you know, like Atlanta's a place to be. And to put it all into context, we're talking about like 2000s, like mid 2000s. So Orlando's not really what Orlando is now.
Of course.
Definitely way more conservative, not, I would say, as affirming and welcoming. And so, especially for a Black queer person, I was told you need to go to Atlanta. Like Atlanta is you're gonna see people like you and everything like that. So I said, okay, cool. So got a full ride scholarship to Oglethorpe University. Shout out to Oglethorpe University. Amazing, amazing institution. And went there for majored in African American studies and choral education because I wanted to be either a chorus teacher, just coming from a family with a chorus background and music background, or African Americans studies because my grandfather was so big on knowing our history, and him and my grandmother, just passing down this oral tradition about like, this is what our people have experienced and what they've gone through. So get to Atlanta, Hotlanta, and what's that meme? It's like, we had a time last night, boy. We had a time.
Yes,
we had a time in Atlanta. I remember my first day that I got to Atlanta for school and how my eyes just lit up when I saw so many Black gay men, Black queer men, and not just anybody's, if you want to call it like that, but successful. They looked good. They smelled good. They were driving, in like the latest whip. I mean, they, like, before there was a soft girl, soft boy era, whatever you want to call it, like, that's what they were. And I was like, wow, this is what I can be like. Like, this is what I can get to. This is what I can achieve. And so Atlanta was really the place where I had to grow. Daniel had to grow. Daniel had to learn. I was no longer isolated. I was no longer, sheltered from the realities of the real world. And so that was beautiful because I got to experience what I kind of call the golden age of Atlanta, where it was just fun. It was just fun being Black and gay and Black and queer. Like, there was such a strong sense of community. Many of us came from small southern towns or small southern cities, and we're trying to find ourselves in a bigger city. And so, I think about weekends visiting my friends down at the Atlanta University Center and experiencing by proxy HBCU life. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but Sigma's always had the best parties. Sigma Punch. And it was just a time of me, like, very much kind of figuring my way in the world. Who did I want to be? What did I want to do? How did I want to show up?
Yeah.
I even think from a fashion sense, like, I tried it all. I tried it.
And not to mention, you grew up very much in church 24/7. You were under a microscope as far as how your mannerisms were, how you walked, how you talked, all the things. So you finally get to this place that's like a playground, and it's like, wait, I can show up as who I am.
I was trying it all. And I think that's healthy, right? Because it was kind of like, just kind of figuring out how I wanted to express who I was, physically in the world, how I wanted to show up, making friends, learning about, the ups and downs of friendships. And of course, in Atlanta, you have your fun, and I had fun. And I also experienced love in Atlanta. In fact, I think I experienced it a lot. My friends would say they felt like I experienced it a lot quicker than most folks, because they'd be like, oh, most of the time you come to Atlanta, you living it up for a couple of years till you're ready to settle down. They're like, Daniel, you probably did a good 6 to 9 months, and then boom, you got yoked up by somebody. And that's literally how it happened. I blinked and I was in a relationship.
Well, let me blink. Hold on. It ain't working, but go ahead.
Yeah. I wish it would work like that now for me, right? Now I wish it did, where I could blink and be like, okay. But yeah, I blinked and I was in a relationship. And that was new. I was so green. So green. But it was also exciting, you know? It was like, he looked good. He smelled good. He was like what folks kind of joked he was like a Shamar Moore lookalike. I mean, he had a New York swag to him because he was from New York but had moved down to, you know, the ATL. And so the girls, kind of using some gay queer slang, but the girls were kind of like, bitch, you done hit. Yes. You done hit the gold mine. Yes. You done, look at you, little country bumpkin that came here soft-spoken and got this. And I was like, ooh, I've arrived. You know, I've arrived. I'm doing good in school. I'm on scholarship. I'm holding me down a little piece of a job. I'm kind of starting to build this life that I've seen others. And so I'm like, okay, if only it was that simple. Right? Because it did take a turn. It did take a turn. A very interesting turn, but it was I think it was all part of that Atlanta journey of me growing up. Atlanta is really where Daniel kind of grew up, where I kind of had to put my big boy pants on and kind of just like, okay, the training wheels are off. Like, you got to sit in this and deal with the realities of the real world.
The evolution of Daniel started there.
It did. It absolutely started there. I think the Daniel today isn't the Daniel today wouldn't be the Daniel today because of if I hadn't experienced that in Atlanta. I'm definitely more calm, more chill, more zen.
Oh, so you weren't before.
I won't say that I wasn't. I think as I was finding myself when I was in Atlanta, I kind of realized that, you know, I could be a little bit of a city boy. I was before there was a city boy or a city girl. I think I was kind of, you know, as part, because you're trying to find yourself, right? And so, you know, I think for me, by proxy, it was kind of like, okay, he fits more preppy. So kind of checked that world out, and then, you know, kind of had some friends who were, you know, they were more like in the streets. And so by proxy, I was in the streets and, you know, learned some street smarts, right? Because you can't be in the streets without learning. So I think I picked up little pieces of different parts that are definitely authentic to me, but it was a journey. And I think we all go through that. I think we've all gone through that journey and that evolution as we're trying to find ourselves.
Of course,
yeah.
Of course. And Atlanta, if there is ever one, is the perfect playground to have.
It is.
At that time.
Absolutely.
That's when Atlanta was Atlanta. So growing up the way that you grew up, being exposed to this very fast-paced city life now, because you grew up in such a very faith-based household, you don't know a lot about anything.
No.
Let alone sex.
No.
What that looks like, what that comes with. You're not getting to talk about condoms.
No.
You're not getting to talk about HIV, STIs, any of that. So throwing yourself into Atlanta, finding yourself in a relationship, what was that like?
It was very exciting and scary at the same time.
Okay.
Because you're absolutely right. Up until that point, I had never been in a space where there was a talk about sex outside of it's between a man and a woman and for procreation. Condoms, I didn't know what condoms were. Testing, all of that, I didn't know. And I think I had talked a little bit earlier about there isn't a manual or rule book for Black gay men or Black queer men. A lot of it, we are finding it out from our good Judys, our friends. I remember the first time I had sex in my relationship and how ill-equipped I was, even with my friends kind of, prepping me where it's like, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. But there was no talk about condoms. There was no talk about testing. All I was told was, just like relax and enjoy yourself. No conversation about consent. What does that look like? So by proxy and by default, I emulated my relationship after what I saw in my life previously.
Oh.
So my grandma and my grandpa and my biological dad and my biological mom, which really wasn't the best example to draw from. And so I was just there in that relationship. The Eddie Murphy reference, the movie Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, and he's like, what do you like? And she's like, whatever you like.
Yes.
That's how that initial relationship was. Wow. It was very much, I played my part and I played my role. And my role in that relationship that I learned very quickly on was to be arm candy and an accessory to him. Because, like the hot boy at that time in Atlanta, it was cute to have, a college boy, very soft-spoken, very put together, very cutesy, very demure, all of that, right? And so I very quickly saw and learned, oh, your place is to look cute, to be soft-spoken, to talk like how you talk, but to really make me shine.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. I played my part. And even in the bedroom, I played my part. There wasn't consent. It really wasn't, what brings you pleasure, Daniel? What are your safeguards? None of that. And so, yeah, I went into that relationship so ill-equipped, so green, and just kind of that train of thought. You're in a relationship, you trust your partner, you believe your partner. There's no reason for you not to believe your partner. You remain faithful to your partner. You do all the things to please them, to make this relationship work. And I played that even when things look kind of suspect. And even when I was like, well, this doesn't feel like what a relationship should feel like, right? Like, where's that love? Where's that butterfly that, I hear everybody talk about that I should get, because I haven't felt that in a while. There isn't that spark between us. And it really became like just two bodies in a space. And everything just kind of felt very on a schedule, but the passion fizzled, and it fizzled quickly. And when that happened, at first I was kind of like, okay, I could take a break from sex because I'm not like a, hypersexual like that. But I'm like, I could take a break. A girl can take a beat, can take a break. But then the break got longer and longer. And then you start to be like, is something wrong with me? And I remember that initially being my default because, for most of my life when something went wrong, Daniel was the problem. And so I remember being like, is it me? And I think, there might be some connection with the heterosexual community, but especially in the gay queer community, looks and all of that is big social currency, especially in a place like Atlanta. And so I was like, well, have I lost it? Do I need to, go to the gym? What do I need to do to get this passion back? And I remember, him saying, no, it's not you. Everything is good. I'm just not, I just don't have the energy. I'm just not feeling it. And I'm like, okay. And after a while, I went from kind of like, okay, being coy about it. I think a little bit of that city boy kicked in and I was like, no, I want it. This is what I like. This is what I need. And he was very reluctant, but he indulged me. But it was few and far in between. It almost felt like I had to beg for it, which I feel like you shouldn't in a relationship. And once again, still not thinking anything. The first time that I kind of was like, reality kind of smacked me, it was like, you need to wake up. You need to take the blinders off. He said to me, I have, we had some friends. He said, so-and-so and so-so have an open relationship. Because in a situation very similar to ours where, one partner isn't feeling like they have the energy to be sexual. And I'll never forget, like I was on the MARTA and I was like, I don't think I want to do that, and I wasn't very acclimated with open relationships. So I was acclimated enough to know that like for this particular relationship, I didn't want to open it up because there was just a feeling of like, something's not right. Right. Like, because I'm very much, love shows up in different ways, in different forms. So I'm pro open relationship if that's something what people decide to do. And even myself, like if the opportunity presented itself and it was something that felt like it was genuine and authentic. But at this moment, at that time, it's like we've gone from like not having sex to only having sex when I'm asking for it. And now you're talking about an open relationship. Something's not up. And that's what kind of triggered to me your gut. That's when that gut feeling happened. And you're kind of like, wait, something's here. And, you kind of just like, I'm going to shrug it off. But it intensifies. And you're left with only one choice. Either just not deal with it at all or become what I like to say, like Dora and investigate. And, it's very true. If you go looking for something, you are going to find it. And that is exactly what happened. That was my first experience with cheating. My very first experience with cheating. So I was in this beautiful relationship from the outside looking in. This beautiful relationship, beautiful couple. and realized that my partner hasn't been faithful to me. And not just a little bit, a whole lot.
Oh.
A whole lot. And so the entire course of our relationship, he had been stepping out.
Wow.
The entire course of our relationship, he had been stepping out. And you know what's the funniest thing? When I realized it, I said, well, aren't you just like the people you've been modeling this relationship from? Because there was infidelity between my biological father and my biological mother.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, history is repeating itself just in a different way.
In multiple ways.
And it stung. It stung because it wasn't only the trust that was broken. You feel like I've been in a relationship with somebody I don't know. You don't want to make love to me because you're tired. But I can read and see these exchanges that you're having with these individuals. And it knocked the wind out of me. I was like, I do not know who this person is. And then I feel like the realist part of Daniel clicked in and was like, oh, so this is why you weren't, being able to do this, or this is that. But even then, I wasn't, my scope, my view of like what was next was very, very much limited. I didn't, outside of that relationship, I didn't know like, okay, like what's the next step, other than like, okay, like I'm still in school, I'm still going to get my degrees, I'm still going to graduate, but you invest all this time in this person, in this relationship, and I feel like part of you lose your identity. You lose who you are, because also, once again, we talk about like that authenticity. My role was to look good and to be the accessory and to fit within this Atlanta lifestyle, right? And so there was a lot of compromising I did around that to kind of fit that mold. People who know me know like I'm a very simple jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. I walk around in my yard barefoot. I'm very much outdoorsy, like all of that. And, I think once again, I felt like I traded being in a first family to being in a first family, right? And so that was a wake-up call. And once I realized about like the infidelity, I didn't hesitate. Like, I didn't stay like my biological mother stayed. I was like, oh no.
You out.
I'm like, nope. I am out. And so I ended it. And was like, you hurt me. I can't trust you. I don't believe anything you say. And I think the best thing is just to kind of like wipe my hands of it. So I did that. There were so many other things I could focus on. I'm gearing up to graduate. I'm in my junior year, the end of my junior year. I'm still working, I'm doing all these things. And I'm also thinking in my head, like, if I could pull this, I definitely can pull, someone better than this. Like, I still got it. I still got it. I still got the sauce. So relationships ends. I'm working. I feel like picking up the pieces and thriving. And then my body starts doing stuff that it's never done before.
Like what?
Ooh, I remember I started getting these fevers. And I wasn't a stranger to fevers. You get a cold, you get a flu, you get a fever. I wasn't a stranger to it. I get a fever. Okay. I came from a very holistic kind of background. So, holistic medicine, fever doesn't go down. Okay. I'm a little bit of new school, so I'm going to pop me a Tylenol or something. Fever breaks for a day. Fever comes back. That's strange. And it's not just like a low-grade fever. This is like a high-grade fever. Then it's hard to swallow. Hard to eat. And I didn't realize it at that time, but whatever lymph nodes had swollen so bad to the point where it almost felt like it had closed.
Oof.
Like my airway. And then wake up in a cold sweat where you just wake up in the bed and it's like just drenched. And I'm just like, this is so weird because I'm a healthy person, even by, my doctor standards. I'm a healthy person. And I remember very distinctly junior year, around Thanksgiving, so close to around this time, I was having Thanksgiving with chosen family. One of my good friends, her mother, she lives in Atlanta. Her mother always had something and we would go. And I went and I was so weak. And I remember she had a bay window. And all I could do was just lay on the bay window. And she came and she's like, oh my God, you're burning up. And her I think her mother was like in the medical field or something. She's like, you're burning up. So she gave me something and kind of helped, made it through the dinner. Then the fever kicked in again. All while this is happening, I'm going to work, still getting the coin, still getting the bag, doing stuff because I'm kind of, you're in college, but you still want to have, them coins so you can do stuff, right? Like still enjoy Atlanta. And I remember being at work, and at that time I was program manager at a homeless shelter that also had I would say a pretty sizable Black, gay, queer, trans population. And so I remember one of the trans women who I had kind of built a relationship with saying like, oh, you don't kind of look like yourself. What's going on? And I said, I don't. I was like, I feel like really, really under the weather, and I've been feeling this way for a while. And I remember her saying, have you gotten an HIV test? And I'm like, an HIV test? What is that? What's an HIV test? What is HIV? I don't know what HIV is. And it's so interesting to think of, Atlanta at that time with everything being what it was. I'm sure there were conversations about HIV happening. They just weren't coming across my desk. I wasn't hearing them, right? Like, and so I remember saying, yeah, you should go get a HIV test. Matter of fact, you should get a test for everything, because she found out I had never been tested for anything at all. I'm probably 21, 22 maybe? 21, 22? Never had a test. Knew about condoms in the sense of like what they were, but never used them in a relationship. Once again, I am emulating what I have seen.
Yes.
Right? So she said, you need to get a test. So I'll never forget. She took me to Fulton County Health Department. We went together and went do the questionnaire. You know, they're going through it. You know, have you ever had a test? Have you, no. How many sexual partners have you had? One. Ask you what kind of sex you've had. Condomless, yes. And I remember saying to them, I was like, well, my partner has stepped out on me with multiple people. Could that result in me getting anything?
And so you were so oblivious.
So oblivious.
Wow. Okay.
So oblivious. I couldn't even tell you at that time what different types of condoms were.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you, about like the importance of lube as a prophylaxis. Like none of that. Like Daniel the Guru now, none of that back then. And so I remember the nurse saying, yeah. I'm like, okay. And then I think something in the back of my mind clicked and was like, something could happen, right? Take the test. They do everything, go through the whole thing about like, this is where you can, like you can always come here for resources, for condoms, all of that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, cool. It'll take 2 weeks at that time. There wasn't
rapid test.
Yeah, there wasn't a rapid test. This was, they just did the blood draw, did everything. Okay. 2 weeks go by. I get a call. Come on in. And I come on in. And at that time, I don't even know if it's the same, but at that time, they would give you your results. You would kind of like go to this hallway, and then it was a room, and you would sit on one side. There'd be like this long, tall plexiglass in a way, and then they would be on the other side. Walk in, they ask you your name, your date of birth, and they go down the list. And negative. And then they get to the HIV, and they said, you've tested positive for HIV. And I looked just like this.
What is going through your mind? How do you process it? What is the first thing you say? Like,
I looked like this, and the room got real quiet, and it stopped. Because I will say, after I had taken the test, Daniel being Daniel, I then did research. So then I did realize what HIV was. I also realized that HIV was in some way, the thing that everyone is afraid to get, because it is the one stain on you that will carry with you for the rest of your life, right? So it got real quiet. And I remember just being like, in a daze. I'm pretty sure there was a voice in the back of my head that was like, this Negro done. How could he?
Yes.
Then you start thinking about, what does this mean for me in my life?
Of course.
And then I talk about that resilience that queer people have. Then that resilience kicked in. And I remember the first thing coming out of my mouth, and I think I said it something like this. They said, do you have any questions? I said, yes, I do. I am way too cute and fabulous to go out like this. What do I need to do in order to live? And they said, you need to get on treatment. Once a day regimen. You need to get in care. We can handle all of that. I said, okay. They said, we're going to schedule an appointment. I said, I said, I'm here. Let's get this started now. And we got it started because at that time, what I equated in my mind, I was like, the quicker I can get on treatment, the sooner I won't look like I have HIV. Even though HIV doesn't have a look.
Correct.
Right?
But you're ignorant at that point.
Right. In my mind, I was like, that's the first thing I need to do. I need to get on treatment so that when I walk into these spaces, everybody can't see my business on me. Right. And that was just that ignorance, right? Because HIV doesn't have a look. And so I remember starting treatment, and I'm not going to lie. It was, at that time, thank God for advancements in biomedical interventions. I was on a triplet at that time. A triplet was such a harsh drug for those of us living with HIV. It saved our lives, but it was just a very harsh drug. And so I remember taking a triplet for the first time and almost being like, I don't want to ever take this again. Because it just kind of like how it was. And I had to focus on, no, Daniel, like, what are the goals you have in life? You want to graduate. You're almost about to graduate. You want to be able to walk across that stage without, feeling the way that you're currently feeling. You want to be able to live and do other things. And so I kept taking my triplet. Not necessarily in the beginning because I wanted to, but because I had to, and I was just focusing on different things. And so I remember when we did a 3-month follow-up, the doctor saying, kidneys look good, liver looks good, everything looks good. And HIV, you're undetectable. And I'm like, undetectable? So I'm negative? And him being like, no, that's not what it means. But what it does mean is that your body is responding really great to the medication, and the amount of the virus in your body is slowly going down to a very manageable state, right? And so you're doing well. Just keep doing that. And he was right. I had picked a little weight up. The fevers were gone. All of that was gone. And, I realized later on that was my body's way of telling me, you've seroconverted. That was basically what my body was trying to tell me. It was like, girl, you've seroconverted. But I was, once again, ignorant to it. And so that I think that began the journey of kind of like, okay, I can do this. I can live with this, and I can, like, I'm not gonna die, and people won't be able to see it on me. And yeah, that kind of started me on that journey of like wanting to dive deeper into what is HIV, what is, undetectable, what are, like, what are all these things? I'm like, because if I've been ill-equipped and I don't know what's going on, I'm sure there are 2 or 3 Daniels in Atlanta, back home in Orlando, that are the very same way. And I thought of it from the standpoint of like, oh my goodness, like there are people who are going through the same, or might potentially go through the same experiences that I'm going through, but have a chance that I didn't have, right? Like, because my chance was taken away from me by somebody else, right? But I'm like, oh, maybe if I can just like let somebody know. So I remember going back to the shelter and thinking about it, and then reaching back out to that same health department and being like, can y'all come to the shelter and like, do stuff? And they started coming and doing testing and workshops and all of that. And unbeknownst to me, it was needed because there were a lot of the girls and the guys who at the shelter were engaging in sex work. They were walking the beat, as we like to call it. Mm-hmm. And it helped them be better equipped. And for those that found out that they were living with HIV, it helped them find a way to understand that, like, HIV doesn't define you. It can't control you. It doesn't own you, right? Like, it's a small piece of who you are, but like you have so much more to live for. And part of giving yourself that fighting chance is getting in care. And on the other side, if you aren't aware of HIV, part of it is getting that information, learning about these different prevention tools and things of that nature. At that time, PrEP was a new concept. I would even say in PEP outside of like hospital settings. So there was a lot of like getting tested and condoms and, all of that. But yeah, it really kind of started. That was kind of like the start of like Daniel, the activist, was because of real world, real life experience.
So I want to go back for a minute.
Yeah.
You get your diagnosis.
Yeah.
Your test comes back reactive.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a conversation with your ex? Do you tell him that
you've
had a test? Does he know already?
Oh, yes.
What happened?
Oh, yes. I remember very distinctly when they were like, do you have somebody to notify? I was like, yes. And they were like, do you have his contact information? And I remember being so shady. I said, you can probably find him on one of them apps under this name, and you can let him. I said you can let him know first before me, because I was hot, like fish grease, like really really hot, because I was kind of like, not only have you betrayed my trust, but you've, in a way, it felt like you took life from me, right? Like you took life from me, so. There was a part of me, we thank God for growth. There was City Boy Daniel that wanted to pop my grill in, put on my Timbs, go over to his house and just go blow for blow. If we just keeping it honest.
Right.
If we just keeping it honest. I wanted to put my hands on him. And then I had to talk myself off of that ledge and be like, no, because once you do that, like, what is it gonna do? And so I let them notify him.
Okay.
And I had cut off conversation with him. Like, when I had broke away from him, I broke away from him. And so he and I did not have the conversation until, I would say it was like over a year later.
Wow.
Over a good year later, yeah, because by this time I had moved back to Orlando, and interestingly enough, I realized how ill-equipped I was, how ill-equipped he was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not excusing his infidelity.
Of course.
That was wrong. But it made it so very clear about how, for many of us, we relinquish our power to someone else. And we place the responsibility on them, right? To be forthright. And some people do. And then there are other people, what I've learned, it's a cycle. While I was ill-equipped to ask the questions, he was ill-equipped to ask the questions. And I'm pretty sure some of those folks that he, had a time with were ill-equipped to ask the questions. Mm-hmm. Because if we're keeping it real, when we are in those moments of passion and matters of the heart, are we really taking a moment to be like, pause, we need to have the talk, right? I know when I was in the relationship with him, I did it. I was trusting. And it felt good, right? I think when we talk about pleasure and intimacy, I think a lot of times for people who don't know how to have those conversations, it's hard to, right? Or you default, right? So after it's done, it's kind of like, getting showered and clothes are coming back on. It's like, by the way, are you, did you, I'm good. Oh, I'm good too, right? So I learned that he was ill-equipped, so ill-equipped. And I think that kind of humanized him in a way in my eyes, where I realized, there's something here. We both were ill-equipped. We both were ignorant and oblivious, right, to what's going on. And he apologized. And I accepted the apology because, in full honesty, the only other option I had was to continue to hold on to bitterness and anger. And that, that wouldn't have done anything. That wasn't going to change the circumstance, right? And so I think we just kind of had a very deep and honest conversation. And I remember saying, I think for the both of us, this was a lesson. And moving forward, now we know what to do. Now we know how to have these conversations. Now we know how to do this. And I even remember saying to him, you know, just promise me that in every situation, that every encounter you have, you're going to give them a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Give them the choice.
Mm-hmm.
And even for me, I believe in giving people a choice because I didn't have a choice. It has nothing to do with, yes, I know, you know, as a person living with HIV, I'm required to disclose all of that. I get it. But for me, it's, I want to give people a choice because I do not want to be with someone sexually or non-sexually that doesn't want to be with me.
Yes. And you have left such a legacy.
Yeah.
I know right now, currently, you are in a new phase, a new era of
am.
Daniel.
I am soft boy era, soft boy era. Absolutely.
So what's next for Daniel in this new soft boy era?
Ooh, I think for me right now, I joke and say soft boy era, but I also think it's a reminder to activists and leaders to prioritize rest.
Yes.
You know, it is amazing. You know, I think it's amazing to create something and your adrenaline's going and the phone calls are coming in, the invites to events and all of that. Do all of that, child.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, milk it till you can't milk it no more.
Facts.
But I also think it's important for us, especially as Black leaders, to prioritize rest and to prioritize self-care and what that looks like. And I think for me, also part of building a legacy is recognizing when you have fulfilled your assignment and when it is time for you not to take up space, but to move back so that others can move to the forefront. And so I think in this next phase and next space of my life, that's really what it is kind of showing folks it's okay to take rest. It's okay to prioritize you.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to create those boundaries. It's okay to let your baby be grown and matured by someone else, right? Like that's how it should be. But then also to continue to focus on creating spaces, you know, something that I've been very, very proud of is the Black Boardroom Leadership Institute. Another idea that I just came up with where it was like, you know, there needs to be more diverse and inclusive representation on Central Florida boards and Central Florida nonprofit C-suites, executive directors, executive levels. And so that was an idea. Actually, I went to Facebook, I think, and used my Facebook fingers. They're a little bit more milder now, but used my Facebook fingers, and it was a call. It was a call out to the Central Florida community, but like, hey, like we got a problem. Like, how do we change this? And through coalition with so many amazing people, we've created a award-winning leadership pipeline program that has taken, I think right before we started, only 11% of Central Florida boards had some diverse representation, whether that was women on there or Black individuals or individuals of the Latin spectrum or diaspora or indigenous folk. Since BBLI has been in inception, which is going on its third year now, it's gone from 11% to 17%.
Wow.
And so I think that has been really great and a reminder to me that like how powerful it is when you are conceptualizing and manifesting these ideas. And that's another conversation for another time, but I recognize the power of my mind and the power of manifestation that I have. Every successful opportunity, every successful idea, every successful thing that has happened in my life, I have manifested it. And so I'm manifesting in this next phase of my life more opportunities like BBLI to infuse different spaces with more of us, whether it's nonprofit, whether it is in the world of media, whether it is, in the world of environmental sustainability or public transportation. I am in that phase of my life where I am coming with my chalk. I am creating a door. I'm opening up the door and I'm like, y'all, come in. And so I think, I know that what my hope is when I transition physically from this earth, what my legacy is going to be is not only going to be Bros and Combo, not only going to be Black Boardroom Leadership Institute, but it's going to be that Daniel, he has been all over the globe and created so much space for community in so many different industries that it's just impossible to not see us, to not hear us, to not feel us, to not respect us, to not value us. And so that's the next phase of my life, is just kind of continuing to create that space for the community that I'm a part of and the community that I love. And not just the Black LGBTQ plus community, just Black in general, because I've never subscribed to that notion of like, oh, I'm just going to focus on us and not us. Because honestly, I feel like me creating Bros and Convo was a great stepping stone for me in creating BBLI,
yes,
which isn't LGBTQ plus focused at all.
Correct.
But it is something that my Black community can benefit from. And so I think it's just about creating those liberating spaces for all of us Black people, where regardless, gender identity, sexuality, or sexual orientation, or even whether you're living with HIV or not, that is my hope in this next phase of my life.
And you're doing a great job of it.
Thank you.
And we need people like you in our community to see a need and meet a need.
Absolutely.
So thank you for doing that, which brings me to our next segment.
Okay.
It's called Give Them Their Flowers.
Okay.
And
I love this.
I want to give you your flowers just for your leadership ability, for your passion, for, like I said, your ability to see a need and meet it in your community. You saw something that was needed, and you didn't sit back and start a group chat and talk about it. You actually went out and saw that there was a space for that need, and you met it. And a lot of people don't do that. So one, thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all that you will continue to do. And I physically want to give you your flowers.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a foodie, so your flowers come in the form of edible.
Okay.
They are cupcakes that are flower arrangement. So that is for
so much.
you.
I appreciate it.
You deserve it. You have done some amazing things within this community. Like I said, before we became social media friends in the digital space, I heard so much about you. Your name was thrown around so much. Mulan was on the podcast, and Milan definitely threw your name out there and let it be known because of you.
Mulan.
She was able to do a lot of the things that she's been able to do. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. So give everyone your social media. Let them know how they can find you, get in contact with you if they are interested in
connecting.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I can be reached on Instagram at Daniel J. Downer, Facebook at Daniel J. Downer. If you are wanting to learn more about me and the work that I do, danieljdowner.com. We got to keep everything congruent. You know that as a creator and a influencer person, but also the Rose and Convo Initiative, such a amazing initiative and organization here in Central Florida, can be found on all social media platforms at Bros and Convo, and see the amazing work that's being done. Support in any way possible, and thank you for just being able to have this opportunity to chat with you and be physically in space. I feel like we've had such an intense but very nice kiki, as I would call it, in a way. So I really appreciate it, and my hope is that, like, I know there's so many other stories that are similar to mine, and people that have experienced things that are similar to what I've experienced. And I hope I'm just a physical manifestation of resilience, that people can see that, like, yes, it may be a beautiful mess and all the odds may be against you, but you can rise and you can thrive, and you can just be that amazing, authentic person that you were designed to be.
And that you are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for this conversation.
Thank you.